discussion, questions, comments, so please feel free. Actually, you don't recite yourself?
No, I don't. I don't like getting my words. I don't.
When did you start writing?
About 10 years ago.
Right.
A decade ago. But when you know where they've come from, and the circumstances you wrote those words, it's very difficult to listen to them. So I don't like listening to them.
Brothers and sisters, please feel free to make any comments. Selena?
I have a comment and a few questions, but maybe I'll spread them out.
Welcome to Selena.
I'm sorry. I'll limit it. So the comment first. I think I was really struck when you said that your work is expendable. So I think that.
No, I think I was trying to say I was expendable.
But the thing that I feel that's really important is that in the West there is this idea with so-called political art that in itself is activism, that it allows you to do so much. But I think what's really important is that artwork in and of itself is just artwork. It's not going necessarily to change everything. So I think there's a real risk of falling into this trap where you produce art or you just go and see art and you think, oh great, I've contributed, you know, and you feel really active about it, and you're lulled into this, and I think it's a dangerous place to be, and we need to really look beyond that. Which and what you were saying then really struck me, and I think it's important to remember that there's so much more than just that. So my questions, I'll start with one and then I'll let other people talk.
That was a really interesting point, an important point, and perhaps the other artists in the room want to come into that, the problematization of the form and the industry.
I have something good for that.
Right. Sorry, sister.
Yeah. Okay. So one of my questions is about how, so Carmen, you were mentioning right at the beginning how your artwork has been seen by social media, and that's how it's spread. So how do you feel about that, reaching a very wide audience and a very diverse audience, to seeing your work here on the wall with, although obviously we want as many people to come to it as possible, the audience is still going to be limited by geography and everything else. So how do you feel about that distinction? Do you feel it's restricted in any way by having the physical objects in front of you?
Well, when I walked into the I didn't actually believe this was my work because I've never seen it in the hard copy form. Just like Ibrahim was talking earlier, I've never seen it like this. I've printed some work out, I've some real cool people sign it, who I admired, like Norman Finkelstein, people like that. But that's the only real physical connection I've had to my work. Of course, you probably can't lead. Of course, you can't lead the same amount of people through this way, but. Yeah, as long as there's a facility, like I said, you can do something like this, it just makes it seem more real. The social network world is far from real, like we were talking earlier. Sometimes I get stuck in that world because people argue with me, I argue with people, debate about things, and so yeah, I'm proud of this my work, but I hope it means more probably means more to other people than me. In the sense that, like I said before, I don't want to be the person who kind of does this work. I don't take pride. I'd rather draw pictures to my nephew, some cartoon character. I don't want to be drawing pictures of things that come from a painful place. I think that's what's art is that expression. You have to kind of do that. So. Yeah.
Did you want to comment? I think it was an interesting point, like I said, about, Selena said about how sometimes when you do a spoken word piece or a piece of art or go to an event, you feel like you've done something, and that's not maybe necessarily the case.
It's far from it. I'm really critical of myself, sometimes overcritical. I don't feel I've done anything, because I know I could do more. If I really cared, I could do a physical act of doing something, and by that means it's like that art piece over there. My friend likes that one for some reason, he likes that a lot. about being a stone thrower. I know I'm a stone thrower. I'd rather be picking up throwing a stone and an oppressor than doing artwork. You get me? It's not. It's the physical act is more great for me, always. But I think what I found was when some people, I don't know how it's for some people, when you do something like this, they think, oh yeah, you're doing some great things. I've never felt that I'm doing something great. I'm doing the bare minimum. You know, if I've got the facility to do something like this, this is the bare minimum. I could do far more. Which is why, like Ibrahim was talking earlier, it does take a lot of time. On certain pieces I've spent a whole week, you know, finishing work and then spending 5-6 hours in the evening. My sister's behind you there, she probably vouch for it. She thinks I'm going crazy. I've spent 12-14 hours on the computer. Smoking like a chimney, of course. And I swear, that's what I would do. So, just lock myself in a space. And it wouldn't feel like 12-14 hours. Because I enjoy doing it at the time. It's like I said, it's like therapy, so I do it. And then I realised like 4 o'clock in the morning I need to sleep because I've got work the next day. That's how kind of the way I operate. But the thing you touched on earlier about the I call it self-appeasing, because we do something. The best time I kind of could think of something like that is when the attack, cast-led attack on Gaza. People were putting all these pro-Palestinian profile pictures. I thought, well, this is brilliant. You know, finally we're beginning to understand that people are being suffering around the world, and Palestine, you know what's happening there. People are going to educate and raise awareness, and we're going to do something. You know, I was very optimistic. There was a protest in Bradford, which is the city I'm from. There was a protest on the eve of, I think it was something towards back end of December, close to Christmas Day or something, soon after. And I finished work, and the protest was 7 o'clock, and I thought there's going to be a mass of people out there, and I'm going to be one of many. When I got there, there was maybe a dozen people there. And there was like a lady with like 4 kids, so as far as grown-ups, there was maybe 7 people there. And it's hard for, I don't know, any man here would tell you it's hard for a man to cry. I cried. I felt so angry in certain ways, frustrated. I was thinking, what does it take? Then I kind of reached the conclusion, it's self-appeasing. We put something up, we're showing solidarity, we care, you know, we want to do something to help. But I think it's not real, you know. And that's where the problem is in social network. You could do something like that and try to pretend or convince yourself that I support a cause, I want to help. And when we're not in real terms, we're not doing anything. You know, we're just showing off colours.
It's about smoking, we need you fit in mind, body and soul, brother, for a long time, so just watch that, yeah. Anyone else, please?
Yeah, I wanted to just continuing on that. In Fanon's book, Wretched of the Earth, he put an extract by Sekou Touré in an address to the Second Congress of Black Writers and Artists, Rome, 1959. He said, "To take part in the African Revolution, it is not enough to write a revolutionary song. You must fashion a revolution with the people. And if you fashion it with the people, the songs will come by themselves and of themselves. In order to achieve real action, you must yourself be a living part of Africa and of her thought. You must be an element of that popular energy which is entirely called forth for the freeing, the progress and happiness of Africa. There is no place outside that fight for the artist or for the intellectual who is not himself concerned with and completely at one with the people in the great battle of Africa and of suffering humanity." Another person I wanted to quote is Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who is, to me, the great revolutionary of Arabia. He said that there are 3 ways with which you can stand against oppression and do good. The first way you do with your action. The lower level to that is with your tongue, with your voice, and the lower level to that is at least in your heart feel something against it, and that is the most basic or the least level of faith. I'm speaking in the sense of spoken word poetry because I do more poetry than I do art. It's an expression, it's a voice, right? It has a part, but it is kind of like it is not the core, it's not the foundation of a revolution. And I think we're coming into, especially like for example when I met you, we had these discussions about all of these new artists that are coming out, and it's hard to filter through the noise. Someone who is just doing it in order to get themselves, to appease their own ego, someone is doing it because it's a fashion, or someone is actually trying to go from that to something else. So it's a means to an end, but it's not an end. So I think we do need to at some point, we maintain our art and our expression, because it is a powerful thing, as I was saying. It's part of your human expression, and what the people who don't want us to grow in strength as a community, what they want to do is dehumanize us. So our art, our voices is part of our human expression, but we have to move from that to action. If we stay where we are and we continue like this, we're never really going to get anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I know I mentioned about Emery Douglas,
Yeah.
which actually the Masood is our director, spoke at the event in Napa Grove in 08. And I think he's a really interesting example of a revolutionary artist who people don't know. Emery Douglas was the revolutionary artist for the Black Panther Party, whose art really popularized the Black Panther Party's message. He also happened to popularize the term the term pig for the police as well through his art, and that's the first time it came into kind of popular understanding.
Yeah.
So that's really important point. Appreciate that. You got any other comments in regards to that, or should we?
No, just second what Ibrahim said. I did a piece yesterday actually. I don't know whether it was. Sometimes I don't know whether my words are. I read something but. Resistance is a movement. It's not just a position. So I could say I resist imperialism. We may resist it in thought, but there's no physical movement behind it. It doesn't really amount to anything.
Absolutely.
It doesn't mean it's bad that you should think, right? Yeah. And you should have those. You have to reach that stage first before you can do the action. But still, until it's not action, it's not real.
One possible initiative that we could all take is doing a summit of revolutionary artists, and having a bigger platform and doing an event to grapple with these ideas. That might be something, and bring other brothers and sisters who are similarly minded and different minded to have a reasoning and conversation. Anyone else would like to chime in, please? We still have some time.
That's my next question.
No worries. Go.
Do you want to say
This is my last vocalization, and I'll be quite
No
close
problem.
to
No
it.
problem.
So a lot of your work seems to echo or reference Hollywood posters, and you've got a good, the bad, and the ugly at the corner there. And so I wonder if you could talk a bit about that relationship, because Hollywood has a violence to it in the way it co-opts everyone's stories, especially people of colour, and it sort of in the culture it creates rewrites our history. So you're using sort of similar sort of styles, but obviously doing something very different. So do you consciously do that? And if you do, how do you feel that?
Well, when they say you're a product of the environment, because this is the only reality I've known is Western country, Western movies, and all this kind of stuff. So maybe subconsciously I'm doing that, but it's not an intention on my part to do it that way. But sometimes you find inspiration in strange places, right? So it was a good movie, by the way. Spaghetti Western, amazing movie. But you could take parallels, and it's not written anywhere that we can't use their vices against them, like they use them against us. So if they use certain vices for means of oppression, we could use the same vices in our own way as a means of liberation and resistance. So that's what I try to do. But it's not conscious on my part. I don't know whether it just happens.
I think it's great, and I think it is a way of, like you said, if you're speaking in their language, it can potentially reach a much wider audience who have been sort of is too strong a word perhaps, but indoctrinated into sort of reading exactly what Hollywood means when it's using that sort of visual language or whatever it is. So, no, I think it's great.
Speak to people in the language they understand, right? So it's like that.
No, that was an interesting point. Thank you.
Can I point something out? I wanted to see how you feel about this. I came across this picture on Twitter which I remember today, because especially when you said that it's important that the people who are going through the struggle, they can express their own voices themselves.
Yeah.
I remember this picture on Twitter, which was a collection of artwork from inmates of Guantanamo Bay, right? And most of it was like escapism type stuff, like beaches, water, sea. A lot of it was sea, empty space, that kind of visual image of freedom that people have. So what do you think of that contrast? As in, like those people, their form of escapism is to imagine that us in a lot of the art that we do, we're shedding light on what's happening, what they're going through. So it's kind of like
Reverse.
two opposite things going on. But like, why do you think that dynamic kind of works like that? If it does, right? I'm not saying it definitely does, but just from that observation that I had.
I don't know whether there's a correlation. I see what you're saying. But I think sometimes in life what happens, if you face some kind of adversity in somewhere, you should be able to understand the adversity of others and the struggle of other people.
Yeah.
So for me it's like that. I don't want to go too much into my private life, but my mother struggled to bring me and my siblings up. We had some issues, so just seeing what she went through. I mean, one of the worst memories I have of my childhood is my mother carrying bags, heavy shopping bags. And she'd get home, she'd have marks on her fingers, from walking 2 miles or whatever, 3 miles, carrying these bags. So those are not the same struggles other people have around the world, but I connect.
I think they complement each other.
Yeah.
I think they complement each
A
other.
struggle is a struggle, right?
I think what the artwork that's coming out from inside Guantanamo Bay, let's say as an example, and your artwork, I think they complement each other because they're both shedding light on the same objective that people have, as in they want out. We want other people to understand what's happening in. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to see how you saw that kind of whole dynamic thing.
I haven't seen that one.
Yeah. I just came across it on
Twitter.
Twitter. I don't know if you'd be able to find it. I don't know if it's easy to find or like.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll have to see it to make that judgment, but yeah, it's escapism, and like I said, for me, it's like one of the first things I said, it was like therapy for me, my artwork. God forbid if I wasn't doing this, and at the time I didn't have a job, I was in nothing, basically broke. All I had was clothes on my back, so if I wasn't doing this, I don't know what I'd be doing, which is why I will never, you should never forget people who've helped you, who've inspired you, or encouraged you when no one else did, which is why Malcolm's very important, the grandson of Malcolm X, Malcolm Shabazz, very important to me, because he encouraged my work, and I did a little piece for him just as a tribute at the time, a picture with him and his grandfather. So yeah.
Could you tell us more about that communication you had with Brother Malcolm Shabazz?
Yeah, well,
obviously he is an interesting contemporary of ours.
Yeah, of course.
And he was inspiring for a lot of us, and some of us were blessed to have been in direct contact with him, and others who weren't were inspired by the example. And he was courageous as well, took some courageous steps, and I think he suffered. And some people speculate he suffered the ultimate sacrifice for taking those courageous steps. So, could you tell us more about your...
I remember him sending me a Facebook request.
Right.
He said Malcolm Shabazz, but people make any names, and I was thinking, Malcolm Shabazz. But then I saw pictures and became aware of him. Prior to that, I wasn't really aware of him in the activist circles. So I was taken aback. His grandfather's my hero, and I told him at the time, so your grandfather's like, for me, is the epitome of, if I could be 5% of the man he was, I'd think I've done something good in my life. And I loved his grandfather, so because the thing that kind of connected is I lost my grandfather in 1996. My sister's here, she'll tell you I've been deeply traumatized by that event. So I've always loved my grandfather, and he was like, for me, someone the way I wanted to be when I became a man, and I missed out on so much because of his life.